This is TWiT.
When the Apollo 8 mission was finalized and given the green light at NASA, they realized that they needed to take television cameras because this was so momentous. They needed to broadcast back to the world what was going on. And so they planned for 4 television broadcasts, the third of which was going to happen on Christmas Eve. And NASA soon realized that more people would be listening to the astronauts' voices than had ever listened to a human voice at once in history. Nearly a third of the world's population, they estimated, would tune into this. And to that end, they told Frank Borman, say something appropriate. And to this day, Borman, who's 90 now, still laughs when he remembers being given that direction because it was no direction at all. He said today it would have to go through 16 committees and probably up to the White House and get approval and censors and focus groups before they allowed the astronauts to take the kind of risk that they were willing to let Borman, Lovell, and Anders take. They just told them, say something appropriate, and left it at that. So the 3 astronauts started to try to think what would be appropriate for mankind's first journey to a new world, first arrival at the moon, that would speak to everybody in the world, not just to a few people or one group of people. And they just couldn't come up with anything suitable. And so Borman took it to a literary, sensitive man he knew, and that man couldn't come up with it. That man went to someone else he knew who he thought would be a good person. That man couldn't come up with it. But at about 2:30 in the morning in that second man's bedroom with all kinds of crumpled up pieces of paper all over the floor from failed attempts, that man's wife walked in and asked, what's going on? And he explained the problem, and she immediately knew what would be appropriate to say to the world during this momentous occasion. She told her husband, he thought that's perfect. It was communicated back to Borman. As soon as he heard it, he thought it was perfect. He told his crewmates they believed it was perfect. It was written down on fireproof paper, put in the flight plan, and nobody ever thought about it after that. The astronauts didn't tell their wives. They didn't tell any other astronauts. They just kept it to themselves. And so here comes this third broadcast. It's being done on Christmas Eve as Apollo 8 is orbiting the moon, and nearly a third of the world's population is tuned in. And the astronauts are explaining what they're seeing, what craters they're flying over, how their trip has been. And then with a couple minutes left to go, they say that they have a message to deliver back to Earth. And Bill Anders begins to read the first lines from the book of Genesis.
Now approaching lunar sunrise.
I guess we're listening to that.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness.
So the wives tell this story. The wives made this.
Well, someone's wife, not one of the astronauts' wife, someone else's wife came up with it. But here the guys are reading an origin story that speaks to so many of the world's peoples. And grown men inside NASA, men who are about engineering and numbers and hard details, break down into tears. But they're not the only ones. It happens all across the world. People in homes, in bars, walking around, all are reduced to tears. The astronauts are speaking to the world, a unified world. And when Borman reads the last lines and they wish a Merry Christmas to everyone on the good earth, people from all over the world stream out from wherever they were, and they look skyward, hoping to see Apollo 8, knowing they'll never see it, but hoping just the same. This was a message with a distinct power and a unifying force that human beings had never heard before. When Apollo 8 launched on December 21st of 1968, Time magazine had already named the dissenter as its man of the year. By the time Apollo 8 returned on December 27th, it had changed to the crew of Apollo 8. That's an honor they wouldn't even bestow on Apollo 11, the first lunar landing. So you could see what it meant to people. And when Apollo 8 got back, they were honored with several ticker tape parades. Millions of people showed up in various cities, including here in Chicago, to honor them. Hundreds of thousands of letters and telegrams arrived for them. The astronauts couldn't read them all, but they remembered one of them, a telegram that arrived from an anonymous person in the Midwest. It was only 4 words long, but they never forgot it to this day. And it said, "Thanks, you saved 1968." And that's how Apollo 8 ended.
That's amazing.